was raised in Moraga. I am a product of Lamorinda, and that's been a very important part of my life. I grew up in Lamorinda in the golden age of California public schools, when anybody who wanted to play a musical instrument could play one. The school district gave us one to take home and to learn. We played in bands starting in grade 4. It was a fantastic experience, and it led me on the career path that I follow today. I want to touch on some, in keeping with the Rotary themes, I want to touch on a few ideas about music as disease for prevention, child health education and literacy, peace building, and also for disease treatment. And I'm going to begin with Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's is a neurodegenerative disease that you probably know somebody who has it, or you've at least heard about it. There are increasingly large numbers of people being diagnosed with it, not because of anything other than we're getting older. We're an aging population. You may have heard the expression that children are our future, but actually old people are, and lots of them. There are now more Americans over age 65 than under age 5 for the first time in history. There are more centenarians, 100-year-olds, than ever before. And Parkinson's is a disease of old age. And among other things, it attacks cells in this region of the brain that make it possible for us to create smooth and continuous movements. And so one of the consequences of that is that people with Parkinson's often lose the ability to walk smoothly, or they freeze. And music has recently been known to be a treatment for this. And the reason is that in order to walk smoothly, there has to be a circuit in your brain that times the steps one after the other. You don't want to end up with both feet up in the air, or you freeze when both feet are on the ground and you can't get that coordination correct, timing one after the other in a certain sequence and at a certain time. The timing circuits of the brain that allow this become damaged. But music has its own internal timer. It has its own tempo. So when we play music for people with Parkinson's, parts of their brain lock into the tempo in a process we call entrainment, and that allows them to walk smoothly. I'm going to show you a video of a gentleman with Parkinson's who is using a walker. He has a little band around his middle so that his caregiver can catch him if he starts to fall, since his balance is a bit off. What you'll see is as soon as she starts playing the music, it takes him a few seconds to his brain to register the tempo, and then he can walk without the walker. No walker now. With just, I think that's just incredible. And there's so many demonstrations of this now. With just a few weeks of training like that, with what we call rhythmic auditory stimulation therapy, Parkinson's patients no longer need the music at all. They can just imagine it in their heads, and then they can walk. Melodic intonation therapy is another thing that has been an application of music in medicine. It scaffolds on the idea that speech is damaged in cases of tumors and strokes, injury, and the music circuits are phylogenetically, that is, evolutionarily older than the speech circuits. They've been around for, hundreds of thousands of years longer, meaning that people often, when they have brain damage to the part of the area that allows them to speak kind of the equivalent of Parkinson's, where they can't walk smoothly, people can't speak smoothly, often they can still sing. And this is what we saw with Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. You may recall she was shot in the head in Tucson in 2011, I believe, and she lost the ability to speak, but through melodic intonation therapy, she learned to speak. At first, she could sing things that she couldn't speak. And so they taught her to sing requests like, "I need to go to the bathroom," or "I'd like a glass of water," things like that. And here's a little video of her in the therapy session, and you'll see she's having difficulty speaking, but she can sing what she cannot speak. The video is narrated by Bob Woodruff, a journalist who also suffered brain damage and loss of speech called aphasia when he was a reporter working in Iraq.
Now, in those early therapy sessions in Houston,
you turn on the light.
It seemed as though words had abandoned her.
Let's try this one. Watch me. Yes. Turn on the...
For those of us injured on the left side of the brain, our loss of words can make us feel trapped inside our own minds.
Gabby, are you frustrated?
And then, in this emotionally charged moment, to our absolute amazement, we heard this.
Okay, you're gonna do this. You ready? This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
You can see there, she's able to sing, but she couldn't speak.
Now,
What about Alzheimer's and dementia? What about Alzheimer's and dementia? We've often seen cases where people with Alzheimer's, after profound memory loss caused by the disease or other forms of cognitive impairment, when there's profound memory loss, it can become so bad that the person no longer recognizes their surroundings. They don't know how they got there. They don't recognize their loved ones. They may not even recognize themselves in a mirror. And this is profoundly disorienting, and it often causes them to fold in on themselves because nothing in the world makes sense. But I mentioned a moment ago that music circuits are older than speech circuits, and our musical memories are among the most robust memories that we have. They last for decades. The memories we have as a child of music from, say, the ages of 10 to 20 are the last to go. And so here's a clip from the movie Alive Inside, where patient Henry, who has been in a catatonic state for a couple of months, is played music for the first time since entering the facility, and he comes alive again.
This is Henry. He's 94, a resident of this Brooklyn nursing home for the past 10 years.
And he used to always sit on the unit with his head like this.
Henry always loved music, but dementia left him a shell of himself.
We first see Henry inert and almost unalive.
But watch what happens when he's given some of his favorite music.
And immediately he lights up and he's being animated by the music.
And even when the music stops, the transformation continues.
What does music do to you?
Give me the feeling of love. No man. Figure right now the world needs to come into music.
This is Henry.
That's Henry, and there are a lot of stories about that. That was narrated by my colleague Oliver Sacks, who some of you may recognize. My laboratory has been working on music and the brain since 1998. As Buddy mentioned, I spent a lot of my career at McGill. I'm local, again, thankfully, in the Lamorinda area. I teach in the Haas School of Business now and then, which is unrelated to this work. But I'm also continuing to work in music and brain and health areas as a neuroscientist. And my lab was the first to show that when people listen to music they like, it releases endogenous opioids. In other words, opioids inside the brain that are like the opioids you might take in an opiate, Oxycontin, oxycodone, codeine. Our brain produces these same analgesics, these same painkillers when we listen to music we like. And music is a very effective treatment, therefore, for chronic pain. We find also that music is great at treating anxiety. And in preoperative setting, prior to being anesthetized, doctors will typically give you a relaxant like diazepam, brand name is Valium, to reduce your stress and anxiety, because it turns out being knocked out by the anesthesia, propofol or whatever they give you, is a different physiological state than being relaxed. And they want you to be relaxed during the surgery, meaning that your heart rate is regulated and your blood pressure and so on. And then when you wake up in the recovery room, people who are relaxed tend to do better than people who weren't going into the surgery. And it turns out that music is more effective, at least as effective, and in many cases more effective than drugs in reducing stress and anxiety in the operating room. And talk about costs. Of that Valium I've pictured here, at the CVS in Lafayette, a single Valium is probably $3.50, maybe $5, depending on your health plan. In the hospital, that same pill, $750. That's part of the problem with spiraling costs. And music is, well, it costs maybe $15 a month for a Spotify subscription, Amazon Music, Apple Music, that sort of thing. In terms of disease prevention, we now understand the effects of music on the body and brain chemistry. In particular, immunoglobulin A, the antibody responsible for fighting infections of the mucosal system, increases following music therapy. When I talk about the mucosal system, I'm talking about colds, things like COVID. Music helps promote this important antibody. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are increased following music therapy. They help to modulate alertness and arousal, which is why we often feel more energized after a concert. As you know, stress is associated with an increased risk of coronary heart disease. I mentioned in the operating room that music is helpful at reducing stress and anxiety there. In daily life, music is associated with reducing stress. Patients we found who listen to joyful music show significant increases in arterial dilation to a level obtained with aerobic activity or statin therapy. It doesn't mean you can give up exercising or give up your statins, but it's an adjunctive therapy. It works in tandem. And it might allow you to take a little bit less exercise and a little bit lower doses of statins. Music in the schools was a big part of my life. I started playing music at home when I was 4, and in the Moraga School District I got a clarinet when I was 8. The school district gave me a saxophone when I was 12. I say gave me, I got to take it home until I graduated. And what we now know is that children who learn to play an instrument have fewer behavioral problems in school, and they learn to read at a faster rate, and they learn to read at a younger age. We don't really understand the reasons for why the reading is better, but we do understand something about why the behavioral problems are lessened. And that is that if you're a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old and you're playing an instrument with other kids, in order to do that effectively, you have to do something that most kids are not very good at, which is to stop thinking about yourself. You have to think about others. This is, of course, something that I know will resonate with all of you Rotarians. The idea that you've got to play your part when in coordination with what other people are doing. Pay attention when they're going to play, when you're going to play. You have to be synchronized. You can't play so loud that you drown them out. You have to be attending to others. And that community building of playing an instrument gains them several years worth of behavioral regulation, emotional regulation, and real camaraderie. This is Frances Collins, who was the director of the National Institutes of Health for many years, then in the White House Science Office, now back at the NIH. She's a geneticist, and he foresees a world in which we can solve health problems with music rather than drugs, providing therapy that is spiritually uplifting and joyful. I've been working with the NIH to help fund research find funding and award it for research in music and health. We've awarded $40 million to labs all over the country, and there's a lot of great work being done, most of which I'm telling you about today, and I report in my book and papers. And one of the more exciting findings actually came out of my own lab, which is that when people listen to the same music together, their brain waves literally synchronize. I promised you in the teaser at the top of the hour something about peace, music for peace. When we have people listening to the same music in the room together, their brain waves synchronize. And what we know about brainwave synchrony is that it causes people's defensive to lower. It builds trust, a sense of trust and bonding. This is partly mediated through a chemical called oxytocin that's released when we listen together. And so I imagine a world in which when world leaders sit down to negotiate a treaty, they would all listen to music together, or better, play music together, because it would literally align their brainwaves, making it more possible for them to make concessions and come to agreements because they feel more in touch with the other people, both physiologically and mentally. Now, I've been sort of waving my hands. I've been talking about music. What elements of music are important? Is it the pitch, the rhythm, the tempo? Well, certainly in Parkinson's, it's the tempo, but metronomes don't work as well as actual music. Is it the timbre, the lyrics, the genre? It turns out it's all of it. In the soup that here, I'm depicting sort of a kitchen where music is made. In the soup that is music, all the ingredients have to be there. If you leave out the onions or the carrots or the stock, you get nowhere. It can't be just tempo. It has to be the whole thing. And that's because music has all these elements that serve to help it become engaging and motivating, and it's not the elements themselves that do that. What kind of music? Turns out, I've been talking about music that you like, pleasurable music, joyful music. There is no one kind of music that is better than another for health, other than it has to be music you like. So we can't say that classical music is better than jazz. It is if you like classical music, but classical, jazz, country, rock, world beat music, bluegrass, heavy metal, hip hop, it all has the same effect on health in the brain if it engages you, and that's a function of whether you like it or not. I'm going to stop there and allow time for questions, and I'm very grateful to you for inviting me to spend part of your morning with you.